Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at the basics of commercial leasing. More specifically, we're going to talk about the different types of leases and how to calculate the effective rent in a commercial property. By the end of this video, you'll also have a solid understanding of lease types and rent calculations that will provide you with confidence when negotiating a lease for a commercial property, whether you are the lessor or the lessee. Now let's start with the different types of leases you might encounter. These can vary widely, but they typically fall into four major categories. The first one that we're going to talk about is the gross lease, or a full service lease. This is where the landlord pays for the property expenses, the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, utilities, etc., and the tenant just pays a fixed monthly rent. This is common in multi-tenant office buildings and probably feels closest to what you might expect from a residential rental lease. The next one is the net lease. The tenant pays base rent plus one or more of the property expenses. There are three main types of net leases. Single net, this is where the tenant pays base rent plus property taxes. Then there's double net, that's the rent plus property taxes and insurance. And then triple net lease, which is where the tenant pays the rent, the taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance, which is basically everything. The landlord's responsibility is generally limited to structural repairs and maybe some major capital improvements. This may sound a little rough for the tenant, but this is actually a very common lease because the tenant is responsible for all the operating expenses. The base rent is often lower. Tenants may also have more freedom to make alterations and customize the space when they're under a triple net lease. Another one would be a modified gross lease, and this is somewhere between a gross lease and a net lease. The tenant and landlord split some of the costs. Very negotiable and most common in the office sector. Another one that we'll take a look at is the percentage lease. This is more common in retail, especially in your shopping malls. Once sales exceed a predetermined break point, the tenant pays an additional percentage of their gross sales to the landlord. So the base rent, break point, and percentage rate are all points of negotiation when it comes to this type of lease. This type of lease benefits the landlord since they gain additional income based on the tenant's sales. This incentivizes the landlord to support the tenant's business. It also benefits the tenant since they can have a lower base rent, which can be attractive, especially for businesses with fluctuating sales, or those in the early stages of growth, or even those that experience large seasonality swings. For instance, if you go to your local mall and you see Claire's jeweler and Gordon jewelers, Claire's is not paying the same amount of rent as the jewelry store that's selling real diamonds and real gold because they're probably both paying a base rent plus a percentage of their sales, which would give Claire's a reduced rental amount versus what Gordon is paying. Now let's move into effective rent. Just because a lease says $20 per square foot doesn't mean that's the true cost. Leases can have free rent periods, tenant improvement allowances, step-ups in rent, and more. Effective rent is the average annual rent you pay over the lease term after factoring in all concessions, and it accounts for the time value of money as well. So here's a simplified version of how it works. Step 1, list out the cash flows over the lease term. This is monthly rents, free rent periods, etc. Step 2, discount cash flows to today using a discount rate. It's usually based on opportunity costs or market rate. Then step 3, calculate the level monthly payment that has the same present value as the discounted lease. Now why is this important? Because it lets you compare leases apples to apples. You may be considering another property that is only offering a 3-year lease with only 6 months of concessions. And so you would need to do this analysis to put both properties on an even playing field and compare them apples to apples. Now let's go over how to calculate rent. You'll need to understand the difference between usable square footage and rentable square footage. Usable square footage is space the tenant actually occupies. Rentable square footage is usable space plus a share of the building's common areas. This could be the building's lobby, bathrooms, break rooms, maybe there's a shared conference room, etc. We will begin our calculation using the load factor, or R over U ratio, to convert usable into rentable. The formula for rentable area is usable area times the load factor. Now let's walk through an example. A building has 12 suites. Each suite has 6,500 square feet of usable space. The total common area in the building is 1,800 square feet. Our first step, we will need to come up with a total usable space. So we take the 6,500 square feet that each unit has and times it by 12, since there's 12 units. You'll get 78,000 square feet. Now we add in the common area. So the total building space is 78,000 square feet of usable space plus the 1,800 common area. This comes out to 79,800 square feet. Then we get our load factor, which is total rentable divided by total usable space. So that is 79,800 divided by 78,000. This gives us a load factor of 1.023. Step 4. Now we times that load factor by the square footage of each unit. In this case, they're all 6,500 square feet. So we would do 6,500 times 1.023, which equals 6,650 square feet. If the landlord charges $26 a square foot, you would times the square footage by the dollar per square foot amount. So this would be 6,650 times 26, which equals 172,900 per year. Or divide that by 12 to get $14,408.33 as a monthly lease payment. Now here's a couple of final tips. When comparing leases for your clients or for yourself, always calculate the effective rent to compare value. Understand what costs are included versus excluded. Think about expansion needs, flexibility, and what terms or clauses you'd want to add to your lease. Pay attention to load factor of each unit because that is typically what you'll be paying rent on, not just the square footage of your unit. Now that'll wrap things up for the basics on commercial leases. If you found this video helpful, give me a thumbs up and subscribe for more content just like this. Drop your questions in the comments and I'll be more than happy to help. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep investing.